everybody, it's your girl, the Biblio Geek. We're doing something a little different today. Sitting next to me is my mom.
Yay!
Yay! Fern Cocker Bronson. And her birthday is tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you'll be how old?
73.
73.
I'm proud of it.
73. 73 years old. I wanted to do something a little different this time. And so what we're doing is I'm doing like a little interview with my mom just to kind of talk about her life, talk about lessons, that kind of thing. And I thought it would be kind of cool to actually share this with, first of all, on my Biblio Geek page and also on my Facebook page with all of my friends and family on Facebook, because everybody who knows me knows my mom. So, some people who are watching this do not know your background.
Okay.
They don't know, where you're from. They know you in association with Kofi,
Right.
but they don't know like your history.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you could give us your background as far as where you're originally from,
Mm-hmm.
And what your background is.
Okay.
Like, what was your childhood like? That kind of thing.
In the early 40s, a young African American female who was actually a mix of Native American, white, of course, somewhere in the family line, and African American and Native American Indian, and then she married a Jamaican man. Who actually was one of the few black people that nobody talks about that actually came through Ellis Island.
Mm-hmm.
So they married, and then down the road they had 3 kids, a son and 2 daughters. My mother was one of the daughters. And down the road she went to the University of Chicago, where she met Solomon Cocker, who was my father.
Wait, back up. So the name of the woman is who?
The name was Selby.
Selby. Okay.
Selby, Mama Selby,
Mm-hmm.
Grandma Selby, and she met Eustace
Mm-hmm.
Selby, and
That was Papa.
That was Papa,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was an interesting mix there. The interesting thing about that was that my grandmother's line came from the very, very high yellow.
Yes.
So a lot of people in her family could pass for white,
Mm-hmm.
and if not, they almost could pass for white. And then they had, or black with green eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I first met them, I was a very little girl when we had come to the United States from Africa. And I was like mystified by all of that, because I came from Africa when it was in the middle of Jim Crow, and we had to still sit in the back of the bus in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't understand all of this racism. I didn't know that word.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would look at my grandmother's side, and I was like, well, they're white.
Right.
And so as a little girl, it was very confusing to me.
Well, that was the first thing I thought of when we met Fredonia.
Yes, that's the side of the family.
And I was like,
just as white as she could be.
yeah, and
then
remember,
when she opened her mouth,
you knew she was black. Yeah,
right. Fascinating. I
yeah.
remember the story of your Aunt Alice, and the story she told me of how when they would go up north to travel, this blew my mind, that Auntie Alice would travel as her maid, as Grandma's maid.
Wow.
And that's how they sat in first class on the trains. This is during Jim Crow.
Yeah.
They could have been killed for that.
Yeah.
But that's how they went from the south to the north, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth to Philadelphia. And that had a terrific psychological, traumatic thing for Alice.
Absolutely.
And I think it totally screwed her up. She really didn't know who or what she was.
Just so y'all know, my Aunt Alice is my grandmother's sister.
Right.
Older sister.
And that's how she and my grandmother would travel. She would travel as her handmaid.
I can't even imagine.
I can't even imagine the psychology of that and what damage that does. But anyway, so my parents met in the University of Chicago, and at the time, when you think of that background that I've just given, for her to fall in love with my dad, who was jet cocoa black, pearly white teeth, beautiful, handsome man, very intellectual.
He was very attractive.
He was.
We have no ugly people in our family.
No, there ain't no ugly people.
Not Nan. Let's just make that clear.
So but can you imagine how my family felt? Because it was two whammies at one time in those days. She married a jet black man, and she married a man from the dark continent, Africa. Right. And then was going to take her back, which he did. Right. And they went back to Africa. You talk about spunky folk. Because my father came from Africa, and he had no concept that he was not a perfect human being, viable human being, that he was meant to be human being. He was a whole realized. He was a whole person. A whole person. Because he didn't grow up in this atrocity. Right. He grew up in colonialism, but it was different. Okay, it was very different. So he came to this country as an intellectual and left even triplefold as an intellectual and a preacher. He was a preacher. And so he just didn't think anything. Yeah, he spoke a ton of languages, and he didn't think anything about taking this woman that looked white with him on a cargo ship right after World War II, when the German U-boats were still in the Atlantic trying to get away from the rest of the world. After the war ended, they were the only black people on the whole cargo ship. And went back to Africa. And so my mother was incredibly brave, incredibly, I don't think she was not that curious. She was just in love. In love. She was in love and struck mightily by this black, beautiful, bold, smart, aggressive, and take care of business. She didn't have to do anything. Right. She used to call him daddy, and he would refer to us as his girls. So he ran everything. Okay, so that's my background, and then my grandmother, on both sides, my people try to. I can't help but be who I am and what I am, which is a take charge person. I inherited that. It is so much a part all the way down to my little toe. The women in my family, the men and the women, took care of everything. Yeah. My grandmother ran the printing thing down in Nashville for the that my grandfather was running. My grandmother on my father's side ran the village, and she's the person everybody came to handle issues. She was like the first wife. There were two other wives. Let me clear that up right now. Let's clear that when you are in a polygamous situation, the first wife picks the other wives. She approves of them. And everybody, it's a contract, and everybody has a job and a duty. And he can't just go willy-nilly into any hut he wants to go into. He has to, and I use that term directly, willy-nilly. He cannot willy-nilly himself into everybody's hut whenever his willy wants to feel like it. No, because there's a schedule, and the first wife does the schedule. So only the wealthy men can afford to live like that. Listen, because you have to support them. You have to support each one. Traditionally, each one has to have her own house. And see, in Africa, that's in the traditional Africa, not modern Africa, but the traditional Africa, that there's accountability that goes with that, because every woman is set up in her own house. Yes. And you have to take care of all of them and all of her kids. And let me tell you, the story that I love to tell about that is Papa Bunka Susu, I remember, who was a kora player. And when he came, he had, the first time I saw him, he had one wife. The second time I saw him, he had like two. He had just married a second wife. And I looked at him when I picked him up. I said, Papa Bunka Susu, you look so tired. He says, Sister, we have to talk. I said, what happened? He said, Sister, we have to talk because I have married the second one. Big mistake. It ain't sweet. He said, I have no money. The women they fighting, they conspire against me all the time. Sweet. And I have no privacy. I have no money. I have nothing. And I looked, he says, I'm getting out of it. Divorced. I'm getting out of it. So I divorce you. That cracked me up, and I thought, see, that's the side that people don't realize. So anyway, going back, Mom and Daddy met, blah, blah, blah. And then back in Africa, and they had me. And I grew up in colonial Africa. And your sister. And my sister, she was born in the United States, and then we went back. But I was born in Sierra Leone. And then I went to school there with the uniforms and the whole bit under the colonial until the country became independent. And that was what year? 1960-something. Who
who were your parents? What were they like? What was Grandpa like? Because I never knew him.
Solomon was, first of all, he was a hunter.
Okay.
He loved to go out with his rifle, and he would hunt pigeons. He would go out this is my childhood memory. On Sundays, we would go down to Lumley Beach. And
I've been to Lumley.
I know. One of the most beautiful beaches. And we would go there and we would hang out, and then he would go and with his rifle and come back with about 4 or 5 pigeons. Look like little Cornish hens.
Okay.
Skinny, famined Cornish hens.
That's what they call a hot chicken.
A hot chicken. A hot chicken.
You have to cook for a long time.
You have to cook. You cook.
Hot
and
chicken.
The bones are so small that you just chew them. So I remember. So we would actually then go home, and then Santigi, who was the guy who helped my mom in the kitchen, would clean them and stuff, and then he would rub them down with the equivalent of ghost peppers, and then they would get roasted, and that's what we would have.
Good eating.
Ooh,
that's just good. It's just good eating, y'all.
Fresh pigeons. And so anyhow, that was a memory of him. And they always used to call him whenever there was one time we lived up in the mountain in Mount Oriole where the college was, so there was a lot of wild animals around.
Tell them what college it was.
Fura Bay College, which
in
was
Freetown, Sierra Leone.
Right, on Mount Oriole, which was one of the oldest, if not the first college in West Africa that was affiliated with a European English college system.
Okay.
So anyways, very old, and a lot of people came through there at the time. It was buzzing, and my father was the vice principal, which is a very high position there. And when he died, he was representing Sierra Leone. Now, he was a preacher, so I remember him, but he didn't preach at a permanent church or anything, but he was a great orator, great speaker. And I recall now on one day a week, I think it was Fridays, all the professors at the university would wear their caps and their gowns with all their what do you call it?
All of their colors,
hoods and colors,
yeah, all
their
colors.
degrees. And he had all this stuff, you know. And I remember as a child a vision of him coming down from teaching a class to the house, and the wind would be blowing his cape open, and he looked like a god. To me,
you feel like a god with that cape on.
He looked like a god coming down, and that, you know. But my father had an amazing sense of humor. He was a preacher. Him and Uncle Willie, who was also not my real uncle, but they were best friends. The Fitzjohns, Willie Fitzjohn. They used to, their Saturday night thing was drinking beer in our dining room with the windows wide open and the wind and the breeze coming through. And I would hear this kind of, I don't know what they were laughing about, but it was always extremely loud. And the big thing was the beer, and they would order kippers. Smoked kippers.
Oh.
Yes. And they would sit and eat those things and drink beer
out of the can.
Oh no, these were the fresh kinds. I mean, they got it from Europe in a box, you know, salted and oh my God, that memory. But I remember one time, you know, because they were pastors, they weren't supposed to be drinking alcohol.
Right.
And I remember one time they were doing it, and this white woman who was she was like one of the not a preacher, but she was very holy, important person.
She was like an evangelist
or whatever. So she had come, and I remember them being so pissed off, and
because they couldn't drink,
taking the beer, putting it away, and all of and I remember
ruining everything.
They were
joy
upset.
snatcher.
They were upset because, you know, in those days, you know, they were rascals.
Yeah,
they were definitely. Now that as a grown woman, I'm thinking about them at the age that they would have been at the age that I am now, and they were stone cold rascals. So anyway, so that's the image I had of my dad. He was had a big laugh, and extremely and my thing for music has definitely come from him, because we grew up where I have clear memories. The music blasting from our house all up in the mountain, you could hear it. And he played classical. I grew up hearing classical, Broadway shows. I mean, I was definitely going to be in a Broadway show because I listened to every one of them. And then he also, because he was initiated in the men's initiation, like the Masons, called Poro. which I know nothing about because
Right.
you
It's
can't
secret.
if you're a secret society.
Right.
But when he would get with his poro guys,
Yeah.
you know, they would, you know, there was just a kind of camaraderie that they had, and Uncle Willie Fitzjohn had it too.
Mm-hmm.
So they had that tradition as well as the European or Eurocentric religious tradition,
Mm-hmm.
which got them educated.
Got you.
So they walked both those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And so I grew up seeing them as men inside of that context,
Right.
which was really very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was she was a passive aggressive.
Yes.
In other words, I never understood. I never understood that totally until after she died, and then I went, be a monkey's textbook passive aggressive and very manipulative. And I was like, wow, you know, my sister and I have since talked about it. We love her dearly and have great memories, but the games she would play and the lengths that she would go to get what she wanted was amazing. And so, you know, we come from that because she played this very sweet, nonchalant. Everybody who ever met her said, "Your mama,
she's lovely.
She's lovely.
She's absolutely lovely.
Yeah,
lovely
she's
woman.
A lovely woman, and she's so sweet."
And we would go,
yeah. My eyes would roll into my nose.
She sure
is. She sure was.
She sure.
Yeah.
Cheers to you.
I mean, because sometimes, cheers, Mom. Yeah. Here, cheers.
Cheers, Grandma.
And Mom. Cheers.
Cheers to you.
But
we miss you.
Wait, here. We got your number.
We figured it out.
We figured you out.
She's somewhere cackling right now.
But my mom was not. Neither of my parents were particularly affectionate, and so I learned. I think that fed into what I became as an artist, because people have told me that I'm just a hugger, and that's why this pandemic is so hard on me, because I like to hug people that I care for, and that includes my students and my friends, and I'm missing hugs.
Listen,
now. I'm really missing it. You know, so
her hugs are legendary.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
Legendary.
I mean, people hug. I go up and hug people who I might even hug somebody that has actually tried to like psychologically kill me. And I'll meet them, and my first instinct is to hug them, because
hug the hate right on out of you.
And see that's why some people who really hate me stay far away from me on the other side of the room, because they know I'm gonna do that.
Don't let her hug you. No, don't do it. Don't do it. Oh, it's too late.
Right, because the biggest way to deflate something is to hug somebody. You know, you can't want.
You're good, because I don't. I would prefer you not.
Some people, and you know who you is, who have been extremely evil to me, and extremely bombastically, if I can say, evil spirited. And so my thing,
evil and bombastic
and bombastic, yes,
that's awful.
It's awful. And they know who they are. And
Google bombastic.
Yes, Google. If you don't know what that.
You don't know what that means.
But let me just remember that the first part of the word is bomb.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the next is ass.
It's ass.
So there's bomb and ass.
Everything you need to know about what that word means. But all I want to say is that those people who actually have been that way with me, and they know who they are, bless. There's a Yoruba proverb that says, "Bless your enemies." Bless them so that they will come to reality. Bless them, because the only thing you can give them is that.
So you kind of touched on this, but we'll go back to you becoming an artist. We'll go back to that. But when tell us the circumstances that brought you to the U.S. And then we'll go from there. So what brought you to the U.S.?
And why in the hell to a place called Milwaukee?
Of all places,
see, y'all don't remember. Come to Milwaukee, 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 Milwaukee. The mayor.
That is horrible. What is that?
That is the song that the mayor of Milwaukee used to sing all the time at some.
Which one? What was
the
his
first?
name?
What
Meyer.
Meyer.
Ha.
That he created a song And he would, every moment he had, he would say, "Come to Milwaukee." And this is during the time of the Civil Rights Movement with James Brown, Milwaukee, Milwaukee, Milwaukee. He couldn't even say it right. Milwaukee, Milwaukee.
Was it like a polka?
Yeah, it was a polka. It was a polka.
Oh my God.
So I was in high school, remember hearing that. And so we ended up coming here because my father got killed in an airplane crash on his representing the Sierra Leone government in Israel. Mm-hmm. The plane went down off of Senegal with 63. All 63 people died. And my mother then had to find a job. Mm-hmm. And so one of her professors had been at Marquette. Okay. Was at Marquette. And it was one of the fathers there mm-hmm. at Marquette. And she wrote to him. And it was an international thing that actually happened. And they hired her. And my father must have, you never know why certain things become really important. If you're like harassed in your mind and spirit about doing something, mm-hmm. do it. Because he pushed my mother from Africa to come to Nashville, Tennessee. And we stayed with my grandparents for a year, mm-hmm. 2 years, mm-hmm. so that she would get her college degree.
This is before he died.
Before he died, in library science. And if he hadn't done that, I don't know what our lives would have been. She would never have gotten a job because she was hired to be the head. She ran the catalog department at Marquette for years. For years, yeah. Before she retired. Yeah. That would never have happened if he hadn't had the foresight to send her away from Africa. And he stayed there and sent him and her and the two girls to stay. Well, Tunde wasn't born. Karen wasn't born yet. Was she? I can't even remember. My dates get kind of messed up. But anyway, because I went to junior high, elementary school there in Nashville for a year, right? Okay. When we still had to sit in the back of the bus and blah blah blah. Okay, so I was there during that time in Nashville. So yeah, you never know. So that's how she got, and that's how we ended up, because the job was in Milwaukee. And when we first came to Milwaukee, that's when, Black people couldn't buy houses anywhere. And that's why we ended up getting a house on 45th Street, which was like a real big opening. And I ended up going to Custer High School because I could walk. Because you could walk to school. Okay. So that's how that happened.
45th in Glendale.
In Glendale.
So that was like blocks away from Custer.
And that was
Custer is now something.
Obama School of Technology, I think it is.
Yeah. You ended up here. What was your first impression of the U.S. when you came here?
It's always been about smells for me. I have an acute sense of smell, which works as an advantage, and it's also a disadvantage. And the first thing I remember coming off the ship at the dock, because we didn't do planes at that time, was the smell of pretzels and mustard.
Pretzels and mustard.
And that is one of my early recollections. If I was to tell you as a child, what does America smell like? It smells like pretzels and mustard.
I remember you telling me popcorn too.
Popcorn too, but pretzels American and mustard. And then earlier than that was my aunt and my grandmother had come to Africa to visit us one time. I was very little at the time. And I remember the first thing I did was Alice would open up her bag. And it was always me sniffing in her bag. Like a dog. Because you know what it was?
What?
It was a sweet smell. America was a sweet smell. Because it was candy and perfumes and lotions. Which in Africa we didn't have candy like that. Oh my God. I would just go like licorice and chocolate and the first thing I did was open up her bag and just smell it. As a child, and it's like, and I think African children are the same now today. It's like when I went to Tanzania on the Fulbright for 3 months, the kids used to love to come around me, and one time I remember this kid was just like hanging on to my hand, just had my shirt and was just sniffing it. And I fell out laughing because I said, I understand what because I looked at him and I said, "What you smelling, baby?" He said, "It is sweet, Mom. Mom, it's sweet." I said, "Oh." I said, "Hold on."
What did you have, like gum or something?
I had something, and so it was like a breath mint.
Oh.
So I went in the house and got some candy, and I gave him some of the candy. Because he was just done. He was like 6 years old. He was done. because that was like, and I knew exactly what that was, you know.
So before you had come to the States for the first time, had you heard of America? And what was your impression of, I guess what I'm getting at was how different was your impression of the U.S. from what you thought it was?
Well, you know, all I can say is everybody just read my book when it comes out, because plug, shameless plug, because the reason is that I have to answer that in 3 or 4 different phases, because as a child, I had no expectation.
Okay.
But the other side of that is that I would never fit in the African society amongst my peers of other children, because I was always different. Because my mother was, it looked like white woman. Oh, first of all, because my mother, we're not beginning, mama, not white woman, because my mother looked white. So I looked like her hand servant when we went somewhere.
Oh my God!
You know what I'm saying? Because
my grandmother was very fair.
Yeah, and so my mother was white looking. So you know, so I didn't fit, and then I had, you know, imama na American, but not a white woman. Oh, na black woman. This one. Oh, she not black woman,
but she looks.
But
like...
she looking like she white. Okay. But now black woman this. But I go tell you, say inside this woman in house, it keep a house like a white woman.
That's what they said.
Yeah, people used to gossip all the time, you know, because my mother was very meticulous, and the house was very American looking in the way she set it up.
Right.
And the kitchen was definitely even smelled American.
Yeah.
You know, when I'd go in other people's houses, it smelled African but good.
Yes.
Because of the way they cooked.
Right.
Because they ate a lot of like dry fish, bonga, you know, and all of that, and fufu, which was a smell that I would just come running to if I heard it, smelt it, right?
Yeah.
But in my house,
in the way they eat fufu in Sierra Leone, and like I believe they eat it like this in Ghana too. It's fermented, yeah. And it's a very different smell.
Sierra Leone fufu is not even Ghanaian fufu isn't fermented.
Okay, so who am I thinking of?
Sierra Leone fufu is actually, you get it and you can smell it a block away in the marketplace. Very different. And these fermented balls cassava, and it's fermented. But I'm gonna tell you,
very strong smell.
If you ever eat Sierra Leone fufu with anything, it's a completely different transformational experience. So, but then coming after my father died, keep in mind that there's a part of my life that we don't need to go down right now, but after my father died, we didn't move straight to America right away. My mother sent me to an old English boarding school, where we had uniforms and very specific behavior. And I was like, out of a school of about 100, 200 students, I was like only 3 of us that were black.
Were they all African?
They were all African. And of course, you know, some were in denial because they were slightly, like one was, I think she was North African. You know, I'm not actually black.
I'm not black.
I'm not black.
So when you were older and you finally came here to live,
after my father died,
after Grandpa died,
smack in the middle of the 1960s, I'm black and I'm proud, and James Brown.
So you came to America right when we were in the middle of the civil rights movement.
Absolutely. Father James Groppy, I was a part of that march as a child. I didn't do a whole lot, but your grandmother, the house I lived in, Olive Selby, you know who used to come to dinner and sit with us all the time? Lloyd Barbie.
Oh wow. That's a Milwaukee legend. That's
a legend. He's a legend.
Google up Lloyd Barbie.
Attorney Lloyd
Barbie. Barbee.
I grew up with him in our house, and Lloyd Barbie and I think one time Father James Groppy came in. I mean, they were all they would have meetings there, and my mom would cook because she was a great cook.
She was, and
so they would come there to eat Saturdays and Sundays, and I was young and I didn't understand. They were strategizing. Okay, and so that was a part of it. And then there was other, you know, there was the black veterans that were meeting when I got married to your dad, and I won't go into too much depth with that, but all I will say is that, you know, it's funny that my house, wherever I happened to have a roof,
Mm-hmm.
there were all these political activism things going on. Now
Right.
that's not happening so much now in my life
Mm-hmm.
now, because it's another generation that's doing
Mm-hmm.
things. But that, I feel very blessed that I had that exposure at that time. But so when I came here after, and we settled, my mom bought the house on 45th Street, and I would walk to I was a senior.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't relate to any of the kids who were there at that time, because I had gone to all British boarding schools through Colonial, where girls were separated from boys. That was the first time I ever went to school where there were boys in the classroom, and I didn't know how to behave. I didn't understand American children.
Yeah.
Because everything was so loosey-goosey.
Yeah.
And I didn't, where I had come up, when the teacher walked in the room, you stood up. Good afternoon, Mr. So-and-so. Good afternoon, Miss So-and-so. And then you may sit down, and then you would never clown in the back.
Yeah.
Or you would never just talk while the teacher's talking. And there was just none of that. And so I was mystified by it. And the other part was that I never have fit anywhere, wherever I've been. I've always been on the outside of wherever I've been. Because in Africa, I didn't quite fit, because Imama, it looked like a white woman, but not a white woman. Right? Now American. And so the African children didn't quite know what to do with me, because I didn't speak, my father didn't teach us the language. And I spoke Creole and Patois, but I had a twang because of my mother. So I didn't quite fit there. They didn't know what to do with me. And then when I went to England, I definitely didn't fit there.
Right.
And then when I came here and went to Custer High School, oh my God, I was the first kid that they saw with a fro. They called, I was one of the first women in Milwaukee to have a fro, and they called it the freedom cut. At the time,
oh, wow.
Yeah, when my hair was a little bit longer than this, it was called the freedom cut, because that's what the freedom riders were wearing when they would take the buses down south. Okay? And remember Odetta?
Yeah.
And all of them during that time, everybody was revolutionary. The big afros didn't come till later.
Yeah. So what did you miss most now? Just what do you miss about Freetown?
The food. And see, when you have jollof rice, it ain't jollof rice until you get that burnt,
so it's smoky
bottom.
That's like what Lovey Ajayi and Yvonne Orji said. You are taking the benefits of the burnt bottom.
Right.
Now we touched on you becoming an artist, but I want to know, like, why dancer? Like, why did you, is it because of the background of you kind of hearing Broadway tunes and show tunes and things like that? Like, what brought you to dance, number one? And then what brought you to African dance?
Well, it's a memory that I have. I must have been no more than 3 or 4. And after Christmas, we have in the British thing called Boxing Day.
Yes, I've heard of it.
And Boxing Day, in Africa during that time, not now, ever since drugs have infiltrated and you can't, gangs and all that has stopped. But when I was little, you know, we would go downtown. First of all, up on the mountain, you could hear all the drums and drum enclaves. All the wind would just carry it up to our veranda. And I mean, it was magnificent. You would hear whistles blowing and all this.
And I have a very foggy memory of us driving through something like
that.
Yeah,
we did. We went,
seeing masked characters walk up to the car.
We actually did.
Yeah, I remember that.
We actually did that. And I think I don't think I have a picture, because you can start a riot if you're taking a picture.
And I remember Edmund
telling us
to put the
cameras away.
Yeah, I remember
because the car just stood and they split and came.
They came around, and I remember.
I'm so glad you
being like terrified, but also
the bells and the cowbell and everything.
Yeah, and I remember like seeing like haystacks with horns. And bells.
That was the hunting.
Yeah,
mascot.
I remember seeing that as a kid.
And so that was my image. That being on my father's shoulders as a little child. the music, the drumming, the shuffling of the people's feet, the singing, the communityism of it all, the ism of it all, has stayed with me my whole life. And as each time I would see more and more of it and understand more, and now with YouTube you get to see all of this stuff. I literally knew that there was a calling that I had. But you know, when you're young, you don't know. You just know that something feels good and it makes you happy. It wasn't until I got to England, to boarding school in England, and I started taking, I took a ballet class, and there was something about just the whole idea of the form of the body. I fell in love with the human body and its ability to move and express that way. And so I think, you know, that's been my whole life. And now, I'd say in the last 20, 30 years, becoming a teacher, there's a certain lovely level of joy, of being able to transmit that joy that I have of being in my body and the joy of just moving it. Just like that cat that just did her downward dog stretch.
There's a cat in the room.
Yes.
And you hear her.
And you hear her, right. But she just instinctively goes down and does, my cats do that stretch. And I'm saying I wanted to be, I was so much like a cat that way in terms of just absorbing everything. And I wanted everybody around me to experience that. And that really is why I started teaching and why I started the company.
Being a Black business owner, what were some of the challenges, especially being in Milwaukee, what were some of the challenges that you faced as a Black business owner? And I mean, it could be something specific to being in the arts or just being a business owner.
Well, I think it was very, I do not have a problem with patting myself on the back, because I think I came from a family who education was always important. So the transition of being an artist, I don't like this definition that artists are basically scatterbrained people who don't know how to manage anything, because the world is in a screw up it's in right now, because there's a whole lot of people who are not artists who are supposed to be running the corporate world, and they've made a damn good screw up of the planet right now. So and so I don't want to hear that anymore about artists don't know how to manage anything, because a lot of people who are artists manage to create amazing art with not a dime in their pocket. So, and manage to survive and make $2, make great artwork. So I don't want to even hear that. But I think that the thing that I learned about being an artist is that you can be the best artist on the planet, but if you don't know how to market yourself, and you don't know how to get out here and talk to people and be a business approach, and you don't have self-discipline, and you don't know how to be curious, and you don't know how to admit when you don't know something so that you get people around you who do know how to do stuff. If you don't know how to do all those things, you're not going to make it. You're just going to be always on the corner with your djembe or whatever, violin or whatever it is, and just with a hat or a bucket. That's where you're going to be at. And be angry the whole time you're there, talking about how come they're flying in a plane and I'm sitting here with a bucket. Well,
don't nobody support the Black art.
But you know what? There's a hole in your bucket. And the hole.
Dear Liza, there's a hole in the bucket. Dear Liza, a hole.
And the hole in the bucket is lack of skill set and skill development. The hole in the bucket is the inability to admit when you don't know. The inability, and the hole in the bucket is that as long as you got a bucket and you trying to just hold on to the bucket, and you never deal with the maintenance of the bucket, then you're just standing on the corner holding on with a raggedy bucket. If my ego was invested in the mission, it would not have been called the Kofi Dance Company. It had been called the Fern or YatiCompany.org or FernCarker.org. I did not do that intentionally. because I watched what happened to all of my counterparts. You know, Alvin Ailey. I watched him have a complete meltdown. I watched Martha Graham have a complete meltdown. I can go on down the list. And I made a point. I said to myself, no, this company is not going to be called Fern Calker. And then when I die, it's dead. I want to be able to create some kind of legacy. And so through the years, I've had amazing people who have worked with me. Amazing people, Duma, Roxanne, Luther, Tola Kuhn, Melissa, Romero. I hate starting to list names. Linda Maureen Simpson. We could just keep on going with the list of these angels and people who were artists who came. Some of them came with skill sets. Some of them came with none. Some of them did not even knowing what they were coming into. And Kothi Felicia was able to be this organization that created a vibe and created an environment where they could be angry and tested and angry and succeed and angry and tested and angry and succeed till one day they said, whoa, look at me. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what it's really all been about. And that's why now, in our 51st year, I can sit back because I intentionally, when I got ready to retire, did not look for those people in the company to run the company who were over 50. Because I said, that's not the generation that should be taking this company into the next thing. Okay? Because the bottom line is that I had to skip that generation and start mentoring. So 10 years ago, I started mentoring this generation that's there now because they're in their 30s. And early 40s. And I started mentoring them so that when I got ready to retire in my late 60s, they were ready to take it and I could still be the whisperer.
Right.
I don't have any problem being the whisperer at all. Like they're doing the Sankofa series because of COVID. I intentionally pulled back. I gave some ideas and then I said, y'all do it.
Yeah.
And they've learned a lot. They had to learn it and do it in a very short period of time. But the next year when we do this, they've got it under their belt. They had to find through. There's some things you can't be given.
Yeah.
There's some skill sets you just cannot be given. It's like there's no manual to be a mama. I wrote you that letter because I wanted you to have that. When I'm dead and gone, you can look at that. Because I wanted you to know that I know I'm not perfect because there was no manual.
Right.
Nobody, no mama
and
has
I was
a manual.
weird.
Huh?
I was a weird kid.
No, you weren't weird. You were produced by two very weird people.
Yeah.
So you couldn't help but be different.
So it's your fault.
It's our fault.
All right.
Yeah, look who your daddy is and look who I am.
Yeah, you guys are nuts.
The thing is that you're also, as a child, I just go back to you for a second. Even though this is your interview, I'm flipping it. Because, do you remember, I don't think you remember this, we used to read on Sunday afternoons. Your dad would have the paper and I'd have whatever, and we'd sit in the living room. And you go get your little books and you sit there and read. And I used to read you the same books over and over and over again till you had memorized them. And so this time, you're reading. And it's like actually reading. Well, except that I said to your dad, I says, look, you had the book upside down. And you were turning the page in the right place. It ain't easy to be a parent because you don't realize that you are constantly in the mode of providing something that somebody's going to imitate. So you were imitating the process of Sunday afternoons and books, and you were imitating the value that we as a family put on books.
Right.
And even if the book was upside down, you were damn well gonna read that thing. You know, and I'm saying, so that's, to me, is, and you still have that in you.
How did you navigate between being an artist and an executive director?
Yeah. Out of self-defense.
Okay.
Out of strictly survival.
Watch your water because he'll drink. He'll drink it. Here, I'll put it up here.
I knew that you know, you have to go back and look at who my mentors were. Rod Rogers, Alvin Ailey, Catherine Dunham. I can go on down the list. But as I looked at their their processes and their careers. The one thing that I saw as consistent was their ability to, because Rod was consummate in terms of his business side.
Okay.
And that's because he came from a family of theater people up in Detroit. You know, black folks who managed their careers. So I had gone and studied under him. I stayed with him for like 2 weeks one period. And I was kind of like his mentee. And Rod, you know, actually, he let me just follow him around. He didn't tell me anything. I just followed him around. And I saw him taking care of the checks and making sure and doing the budgets and sitting with his administrative staff. And I kind of copied that, you know. I went and sat in the hallway of the Alvin Ailey building one time going on my research trip. I did a lot of research, you know, on how these people were running their businesses.
Right.
And I checked out Catherine Dunham, and I saw the things that she put in place. And my curriculum that I developed at UWM, I studied Catherine's curriculum. You know, so I didn't have to reinvent the wheel. I understood at basic level where she was coming from. So I knew that if Kofi was going to be anything, it would have to have a business etiquette. The other thing is that I was battling male bashing.
Okay.
Is that from not only the white male syndrome and the white females, but I was catching it from black males. Because I was a female, because when I walked out of the office and then I went into the studio, I had to deal with the one who made the final decisions with all of the drummers. Okay? And I remember when I first came up with wanting to do, Duma and all of them finally came on board when they saw where I was trying to go, and they were very supportive. But at the beginning, we were catching hell. You know, we were told that women who drum, you know, we were all not going to be able to have children. And I mean, it was horrible stuff that was being said to us, you know. And now women are drumming all over the place. For some reason, none of that really bothered me much. I think I was too yokoto, which I found out was my, did I tell you that was my nickname that Auntie Amelia told me? That's what they called me in upcountry. Always messing around, always busy. Yokoto. So the minute I heard about that when we went and took you to Sierra Leone.
Oh, okay.
That's how long I've known that. So that always rolls in my head that that's who I am. And people like who have a problem with me, they don't realize
what is happening.
That the problem they're having is that they're dealing with a Yonkoto spirit, and I can't explain it. I'm still dreaming, and I'm still visualizing. And the team that I got, you know, Damar and Sonia, Kumasi, Sarah, you know, all of them. They hold me in high respect, and they understand, and they also want to preserve my legacy. Right. They have proven that to me on numerous counts. Right. So, and the fact that I have been able to pull back, and they're realizing that I'm giving them a lot of reign to grow and make mistakes is I think endearing them to me and me to them.
What advice do you have for artists, especially now with things being the way they are?
This is my thing to artists is, you know, I can't say enough about why it's important to read what other artists say. Yeah. I mean, you're not alone, because
you're not in a silo.
You're not in a silo all by yourself. And see, this is the thing with artists is that we have to dig, we have to be so tunnel visioned that to create, right? You know, you're a writer, so you know what I'm talking about. But you've got to be able to open the door sometimes to the silo.
I mean,
and look around and be inspired by other people who are also in silos.
See, the thing is though, dancers, like artists who are dancers, are very different from artists who are painters and sculptors and writers.
Because we need other dancers in the
room.
You
need each other.
Right.
You guys are very social, and you need
to touch
other
and
dancers. Where writing is very lonely sometimes.
Right. Well,
and isolate.
This is the thing about dance, about this. There's no if and but about it. COVID-19 has created a massive disconnect that is very painful, because I don't care how many times they Voom or Boom or whatever it is. Zoom. Whatever they Zoom.
She done went through
boom.
six different continents on that.
Right.
Zoom.
I don't care.
Boom.
Whatever the boomology that their technology that they're using right now, where you have the screen is 9 split and there's all these dancers doing in their living room the same dance step and inventing on that. I'm sorry. It's not the same, and I don't want us to get settled into thinking that that's the new norm. It can never be the new norm. It is not the art of dance when we can't get into a space that is an empty, clear space where we come in, where the room is filled with the spirit of all the dancers and the musicians or what have you in that room. Stay active, stay connected through the process we have to, because of COVID-19, with the intention, because to me intention is the active partner of attention. So, give the attention to maintaining your body and to building the other muscles that you need. Brain muscles, spirit muscles. This is a time to enhance your spiritual and brain muscles.
Can you imagine what it's going to look like when we finally get out of
this? It's going to be if everybody's done their homework.
So different. It's going to be
richer.
Yeah.
The art is going to be deeper. It's going to have more volume, intensity, density, especially if everybody is taking care of that side of them.
Yeah.
Because what I have discovered since I retired, like now everybody's freaking out because they're separated and all of this stuff. But those of us who are retired, this is what retirement looks like. This is what it feels like. We're alone in the house, getting up when I feel like it and staying up all night and writing if I want to. But you develop those muscles that when you're still a dancer,
right,
you're doing the physical muscle part of it.
Right.
But now is the time to grab hold and increase your mental muscle and your spiritual soul muscle. And some of that is through reading. Yeah, it's okay to look at all of the videos and be inspired by that, but start writing down the ideas coming in your head.
Right.
So when we finally get back, you coming in there so full that you can't even get in the door.
Right.
Your spirit is going to be so wide that you can't get in through the door.
Right.
That's what needs to happen, and that's what I'm excited to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what literature comes out of this.
Oh my God!
Because
it's going to be amazing.
It's going to be. I can't wait. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait.
And singers, the thing about singers, it's one thing to have an amazing voice, but the orchestra. Look, an orchestra is an orchestra, and it's not. You don't get the effect of the orchestra if you're just seeing 1 or 2 or 5 or 9 on a screen. You got to go in the hall, and let the music massage you. I think my choreography has been outstanding, and I know this. I've looked back at some of my work, and a lot of people don't know half of what I've done, because there's a whole side of my choreographic career that the average people in Milwaukee never saw, because it was on the students at UWM. My last one I did, Their Eyes Were Watching God, is one of my classic pieces, which one day will show.
Right.
But I'm saying that most people have not seen that side of me.
Yeah.
But I think about how I wasn't as good a mom. I think I wasn't as good a wife and a mommy, because I had a lot of times, I'm like very self-possessed up here on the next project,
right?
And it does eat you up. But as a mom, I know that I was self-possessed. And it wasn't just,
it was lonely sometimes.
Yes. I saw that in you a lot, because I used to dragging you along to the, you were lonely a lot, because you'd have your little bag and you'd be sitting on the side, And I remember those days, and I have a picture of you that every time I see it, I want to just tears well up because I see the sad. You're like this.
Yeah.
And I see the sadness in your face. It's like, I don't want to be here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I could see that in you.
Mm-hmm.
But I had no alternative because I had invested all this time in it. Because I could have gone to New York and I could have been a dancer in New York if I had wanted to. And I made a decision not to.
Mm-hmm.
And that was right after that I met your dad.
Right.
And so it was definitely the right course for me because I got you and I got the company.
Right. Yeah.
And if I'd gone to New York, I don't know what I would have had.
But you know what though? Like I tell people all the time, my childhood was so vastly different.
Yeah, it was
from
expansive.
Everybody else's childhood I knew. Because of who I got to meet.
There you go.
I remember one of my, and I always joke about this, about coming home.
You never knew who
I never knew who would be in the house.
Who was going to be in the house.
And I remember coming home one day and the backyard full of drummers.
Yeah.
And me going, oh no, God.
And now just imagine.
And I remember.
And a lot of them were African.
And spoke no English.
No English.
And
you didn't even know they were the masters.
Right. And then
like
they would be like, Morcham,
Sissoko, Kamara, you know, they were all of it.
Kamarale.
Those are the really great memories. That you met women of the Madeline Yayo Deli Nelson with the dreads down to her ankles. You met the women of the rest in peace. Women of the Calabash. I mean,
what were the singers? The
and they came to Alberno all the time.
Yes,
I know, and I have the shoot, I seen them.
Why can't I remember their name?
And they've done all these amazing
and they
stuff.
sang in the kitchen.
Yes.
I remember them standing around in the kitchen, and me and Liani.
Mm-hmm.
It was me and Liani, and they
Sweet Honey in the Rock.
Sweet Honey in the Rock.
Sweet Honey in the Rock.
That's who it was.
Look, I had all those women in the kitchen.
Standing in the kitchen, I remember that.
Because what I would do is when these people would come through and do stuff, I would cook. And they would come over to my house.
And they did a vocal exercise. This is imprinted in my head.
Wow.
And they did a vocal exercise standing in a circle in the kitchen, in our tiny little kitchen on 24th Street.
Yeah. Those women
they were the nicest
instruments. Just everybody was sweet. Yeah. And everybody was sweet. I didn't know any bad artists. Papa Bunka Susu and the Cora.
And Chief Bay.
Look.
Chief
Bay. You get 2 teeth in his
Chief
head.
Bay. I will never forget. I was fortunate.
You were fortunate. Really, at the time, you may not have felt that, but you got to hang out on tour with us. Yeah. You got to hang out you were kind of like the company mascot. You know what I'm saying? Because
I was the company griot because I remember everything.
Oh, and see, that's the other thing is people don't realize that you got stories on all of
them. How do you say woyai?
Woyai. You got the ugly on everybody.
Also, I remember first meeting Asan.
Oh my God.
Asan Conte.
Off the hook. Off the hook. I mean, when he was in his prime, you could not top him.
That dude, man.
You just couldn't. And then I think about John Blanford.
I remember John.
International African American Ballet. I think about, please, Alayo Tolbert.
Alayo.
Muntu.
No, I'm thinking of Alayo, yeah. Alayo from Chicago.
I mean, those people who've never seen Alayo Tolbert dance.
Amanier.
Amanier, please.
Amanier.
She's like a butterfly. She never touches the floor. Amanier never touches the floor when she dances.
And let's not forget Garth Fagan. Garth is the most down to earth. This is the guy. Let me just tell you how big time Garth is. Garth choreographed
The Lion
King.
That's
on
right.
Broadway.
All right.
He's that dude. Okay. He has his own dance company.
Yep.
Garth is that dude. And literally came and sat down with us and had dinner at Elsa's.
Yes.
And ate key lime pie with it was weird with goat cheese spread sprinkled on top. And I met Catherine Dunham. I met Catherine Dunham.
Sure did.
I met Catherine Dunham
I took you all the way down. I
met her twice. I met her here and I met her in Detroit.
That's right.
Yep. And
not Detroit.
St. Louis.
In St. Louis.
I was
we
real
were sitting
young.
in her house.
Yeah, we sat because we were down there visiting family.
Yeah, and we went and
we stopped at her house.
We spent an hour with her.
That I don't really remember
much.
That.
She didn't talk much, but she came down and we sat there.
And I met Eartha Kitt.
Sure did.
Backstage at Timbuktu
and
her puppies. She had two little rat dogs.
Sure did.
Funny looking rat.
And that was an interesting woman too.
They came here for
Timbuktu, and we had an opportunity
was playing
to go
at
and spend time with her
at the Pabst Theater, and you took me backstage to meet Eartha Kitt. And I didn't realize until
later
that she was Catwoman.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm at Catwoman!
When I think about and you know who else sat in our house and ate at our house?
Who?
The brother who was the actor who played Dracula.
No, Blackula. Yes, Blackula.
What was his name?
His name was, hold on, William Marshall.
William Marshall sat in my house on 24th Place, and I cooked dinner for him. What kind of bad childhood did you have?
My childhood, the only thing was I did envy, because remember, like, a lot of my friends from the neighborhood had multiple siblings.
Yes, and you were an only child.
And I was an only child.
Yeah.
I was your only child. Right. I have a sister who is older, but was raised in a different house all the time. And she was always with us. But on those times when she wasn't there,
right,
or my god sisters weren't, or my cousin Leonie wasn't there, or my god sisters weren't there, I was very, very lonely.
Yes.
And no, what happened was I threw myself into books.
You can't let the past dictate everything that you think in the present, and because it will affect your future. There's so much that has happened in the past that we can hold on to, and even the bad things catapult us into how to handle what the future is getting ready to throw in our lap. And I think about, you are the composite of what informed you as a child. I'm the composite of what informed me, and our childhoods were completely different.
Right.
A little later.
You remember I choreographed the dance about the gathering of women? I told Damar we have to do that again. And I have to invite all the mothers that have lost their sons and stuff in the city, because I have to have them sitting on a stage. Okay? I'm going to have them sitting on the stage.
A lot of things have changed since the last time we've done that.
Listen, that piece was way ahead of its time.
A lot of things.
The Hottentot Venus was way ahead of its time.
That's a terrifying story.
The Hottentot Venus? Shoot. It's a horror
story.
If
you're not familiar with the story about Shahura, the Hottentot Venus, please Google her. And
what is the child's book?
Barbara Chase Reibold. Reibold.
Riboud. You gotta get this book, because you need to read it.
It gave me nightmares.
When you think that this young woman was actually put through all of this, and just to make it short, her body when she died was stuffed in the museum in Paris. And Barbara Chase Reibold, who's a badass author and a researcher, is went and excavated all of that information.
And shout out to South Africa, who got her back.
Look, Mandela
and got her body back
and buried her
in her homeland.
And shout out to that. And in my piece, I actually end the piece. And I remember people were like, that was depressing the way that ended. Oh, I said, oh, you wanted to see a celebratory dance? No, it wasn't meant to, because remember I ended it with them and the lighting and the stage, and that whole thing just ended. And because it's not a happy story, people.
It's not. It's a terrible story.
Tomorrow I'll be 73, and I never thought I would hit this age. But anyhow, I feel I'm grateful and I'm thankful, and for my life and the people in my life. But at 73, the concern I have is Black folks and what we gonna do next. We don't trust each other.
Yeah.
We don't love each other the way we need to. We are cliquish. We let economics separate us. You know, I mean, as long as education separates us, you know, as long as we behave these ways, and it's like in my article, I talk about the time is done for the black people who are just glad to be at the table.
Yeah.
I'm trying to say that black people, we have a lot of cliquish stuff going on, which is a direct result of what happens when you live in a segregated society.
Right.
A little later.
If that ain't a movie about fear of black men,
Exactly.
I'll eat this gay lady on my head. With a little bit of salt and pepper and some.
Get some habanero sauce.
I'll eat it right up. Change my mind.
Yeah.
11 minutes later.
I used
That's
to ask
what it
my
is.
father all the time,
Mm-hmm.
why?
Mm-hmm.
I guess I followed him around to why?
Mm-hmm.
And he would get aggravated.
Mm-hmm.
And his answer to me was, because W has no legs, H has a tail, and Y has a long, long tail.
That sounds like something Daddy would say.
And then I would just go.
That's like Dad. That's like Dad says, "Must is," because must ain't don't sound right.
Right. Exactly. What? Something like, and then you walk away.
That's what that's meant
what
to
it's
do.
about, right?
So you walk away confused and try to figure it
Y
out
has
on your
no
own.
tail. H has a short tail. And Y has a
long,
long
tail,
tail, which is really deep on a multiplicity of levels.
Oh.
So that's how he would answer the questions he didn't want to be bothered with. And I was like, oh my God. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Well, we're going to end this here because we
Yeah,
talked
this
for
has been
2.5 hours.
Ooh, and I'm hungry.
And I'm hungry.
Yes, it's time to eat.
All right. Love y'all.
Love you.
I don't know who I'm interviewing next. And you know, for a split second, the Holy Ghost said, don't do this. And one of these days, I'm going to learn to listen to the Holy Ghost.
No, the Holy Ghost made us do this.
The Holy Ghost
This
said,
is overdue.